It's recorded. We had some technical difficulties. Hey, gang, welcome to Coach Rozy's Chalk Talk. Today I've got a good friend of mine, John Hofman, all the way from California, joining us. How's it going, John?
Great, Mark. How you doing today?
It's great. It's the same stuff, different day. Things are starting to change. I think starting to open up. Hey, for folks that maybe don't know you, I know you really well. Kind of go back through all your your degrees and what you've been doing, and from when you were on the East Coast all the way now bringing you to the West Coast.
Yeah, no problem. Basically, I'm originally from New Jersey. I studied at the University of Massachusetts, Boston in economics. And then I decided upon graduation to take on the endeavor to train for the Olympics in the sport of spring kayaking, which changed the course of my entire life, I guess you would say, where I became a resident athlete. And one day, the sports team scientists were like, hey, you're going to have to grow up one day and get a job. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. And their response was, get your master's degree. And I said, oh, that's a great idea in kinesiology. You're already being the lab rat, so you already understand it. And then from there, I basically moved to California, Sacramento, to actually prepare for the 2004 Olympics, because Olympic trials were held in Oakland. And I missed the Olympics that year by 2 spots. The original goal was 2008. But again, sometimes life throws you curveballs, and I actually ended up taking a job with the Sacramento Fire Department, where I was their strength and conditioning coach. And this now was an entire different path and a new life for me. I was happened to be lucky at the right place at the right time, I guess. What was training for the Olympics took me to Sacramento, which then led me into the tactical industry. And for the past over a decade now, I've been working strictly with law, fire, and military personnel.
You want to maybe talk to some folks, because I think some of like the coaches and stuff, I think it's still, for us, we've been doing it for a while. That's how kind of we met, was doing some tactical stuff. But I think for a lot of strength coaches listening, like I also talk to folks that are like, hey, I heard about this new thing this like last month, and it's been around for a while. But kind of about the process that it started from, even when you first got in to where it's at now and what's going on, kind of from just the whole process of TSAC from the NSCA to, departments having strength and conditioning coaches.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. I guess to those new in the industry, it is new, right? Because we're still I started in 2007. The NSCA started the tactical strength and conditioning program, I think around 2006, with Mark Stevenson. And there it evolved, but that was the beginning stages. We're really still at the early stages of this, so it's not uncommon to be like, hey, this is new. Over 10 years ago, there were no jobs. There were no strength and conditioning coaches who were working in law enforcement and fire. And I just happened to be, again, at the right place at the right time. I remember interviewing, I think it was 1,600 candidates, and somehow I ended up getting the job. I think it's just because I'm dysfunctional. I don't know. But really what happened was, you're thrown into this world where, just like all the other coaches, I wanted to work with athletes. I wanted to work with athletes, not realizing what I had in front of me. And we often call them tactical athletes, but I think that was a mistake on my part early in my career, because I approached it as, oh, these guys are dedicated, they're this, they're that, it's hardcore. But in reality, they're just normal human beings working a very physically or mentally challenging job, emotionally challenging, actually. So it changed my outlook in terms of how to train these individuals. But what we started to see is the success. And from 07 to, you and I coming together in 08 with the Post Project, and then building the academy programming, it just evolved. And I think the success that we started to see, just not only locally, but nationally, you have Mick Sturley in New South Wales Police. He's a sergeant, but also a strength and conditioning coach, and they were having an enormous success. And we started to see this evolution. Now the military, right, with SOCOM and DevGru all getting on board, you started to see the wings started to expand. And I think now we're really at the beginning of where this industry can go. We're really now taking the steps forward. So it does really seem to be still new.
Where do you see, John, still like the pockets? Because I kind of, and I'm not as deep in it as you is, because I'm still doing the athletic end more so, but I still kind of even see like in the Midwest, there's pockets where it seems to be more accepted. And then there's pockets where it's still like, I mean, around here we have a lot of volunteer fire department, you know, so for them to do the physical end, it's like, well, yeah, if you want to go to the gym and do, you know, be a gym rat, that's great. But if you're not, we're not so worried about it. So how do you see it progressing from where it's at now to 5 years, 10 years down the road?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I think about this all the time. Being one of, like, some people say the OG, right? One of the original gangsters in this
Right.
industry. I'm very cautious or protective of where it's going to go. And on one end, it could just spiral out of control and just, a free for all, and everybody, jumps on board and wants to, apply the athletic concept into this realm. And I'm starting to see that actually not work, at least on public safety side. Because in public safety, it's a little different than military. Your military, we're seeing the expansion of each unit having a strength and conditioning coach, an athletic trainer, a registered dietitian, a physical therapist. So we're going to see the athletic model within the military, but they also have the resources available to do it. So each individual will work within their realm, right? And a team environment, just like any other professional staff. But on public safety, it's not happening. I have to be the physical therapist. I have to be the strength coach. I have to be the nutritionist. I have to be the therapist in any manner. So we have to be a little more well-rounded, because we don't have much resources. So we have to be resourceful. So where the future is going, the military will probably drive the industry in terms of this health and wellness. The big word right now is holistic.
Right.
And I kind of find it comical, because I developed a holistic program over 10 years ago, and everybody laughed at me or mocked me because, well, they're athletes. They need to do high intensity power training, and we need to crush them, and everybody needs to be, a Navy SEAL. And I would shake my head going, they're already crushed. They don't need any more crushing. They need to be put back together. So with that concept, I am happy to see that it is becoming more holistic. I'm just not sure if the young coaches coming in the industry have the emotional intelligence to handle or work within the environment.
Well, and do you think I mean, because there is such a gap, and you and I have talked about it before, there's such a gap between the young guys that are in, you know, first responder, firefighter, compared to the 40, 50-year-old guy. So I think when you come in as a young guy and you work with young guys, it's kind of like, let's get after this thing. We want to do the CrossFit and crush each other, because it's still kind of the macho thing to do. But as they get older, you know, the process changes, right? Don't you think that the mentality changes, but the strength coach's mentality doesn't?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize it. I mean, we all have egos as coaches, right? And we're always driving and challenging and competing. But I think in this line of work, we need to take a step back, because there is no competition. I mean, there is no scoreboard, and there really the only scoreboard is line of duty deaths. So you kind of have to tone it down a little bit and be more nurturing, or have a higher level of emotional intelligence, and know how to apply the strength and conditioning principles for each individual, because you can't just use a hammer for everything. And I think that's where the young coaches need to evolve. They have the knowledge base, probably, right, of how to design programs and coach training, but I think the communication side of it, which is probably very beneficial from the personal training side, I would say. I think that's where I learned how to develop or cultivate relationships, is the personal training side. And then you evolve to the athletes, but really you're asking people to pay one-on-one. It's no different. So you have to learn to evolve and know where to go as a coach with the clientele that you're working at. As you said, a 50-year-old is not going to need the same as a 20-year-old.
But you're kind of one, when I've got with you more and more and more, to be able to see, it's like a glove. Like, we always talk about the components and stuff. The strength and conditioning is only one part of that glove. You want to maybe talk about some of those other components? I know you've done a great job with the folks that you worked with, and now I know you didn't say it, but you were Southern Cal University as their tactical director for their TSAC program there. But it's not just the strength and conditioning. I think we all go in a lot of times with, like, I'm going to strength, I'm going to condition, we're going to make sure they can run and break through walls. But you see it from the longevity standpoint. There's those other, like, fingertips that you deal with, I think, and do a great job. I think that's what makes you stand above a lot of guys that are trying to get into the tactical part. You see the whole glove, if I could use that as kind of an analogy. You know what I'm saying? You see the other fingertips that you have to reach out to as a And I know when I was looking at your guys' website, you call it human performance optimization, right? Um, which I like better than saying, TSAC and working with athletes, because you are looking at those other components. I'll shut up and let you kind of talk about that, because I think you do such a great job with that.
Thanks. I mean, I think it first starts with, if you're a young coach, all of the being able to, from my point of view, to see the glove comes from experience and years of making, I think, a lot of mistakes in the beginning. And I got to give my firefighters credit, because initially they hated me, and I think rightfully so. But they also were open-minded to allow me a second chance. And I had to take a step back and go, all right, it's not them, it's me. And they're not using me because I must be doing something wrong, right? And I think it's hard for coaches to do that and say, what am I doing wrong? A lot of times we'll be like, well, they're just not listening. They don't know. They don't want to do it. That's not my mentality. I've always been one to say, let's help. There's always a way. We just have to, peel the onion back. So over time, I think seeing the glove became natural to me, getting the big picture and realizing all we're doing is giving them hope back. I mean, think about it. You wake up every day in 911, it's a bad day. Like, it's always crap. And that wears on you after a while, right? And then now you have a personal life that could be damaged. You may have back pain from years of abuse. And eventually you're just trying to survive. And that's no way to live, really, especially when the honorable jobs that these individuals do, right? So I always take it upon myself to say my job is to give them hope back, to give them a life back, whether that be after retirement or during their midpoint of their career. And so really that's my approach. It's not like I need you to, lift more weights. I just want you to feel good. You're exposed to enough crap as it is.
Right. So what's your steps when you say, I want guys to feel good? And I know you and I talk about this, but to share that when guys say, I just want to feel good, what steps do you approach to take that from us? Because I think even as a coach, whether they're, it's a strength coach in high school listening, sometimes I think we get the mentality too, we just got to get them to where we want to get them. And sometimes it is maybe taking a step back and looking at a high school athlete or a college athlete, or maybe you're a personal trainer working with somebody, and to take that step back and go, what does this person need? Instead of saying, well, here's my program, I'm shoving it down your throat. What do you think some of those things are that they need, or that you see?
First, we have to look at understand, really what fit for duty means, right? And so we look at the holistic side of things, right? So we have exercise, we have nutrition, we have blood work, we have training, and that means on the job. And we have, are you mentally sound? And then finally, physical pain. And they're my 6 starting points. If they have pain, I can't focus on the first 5 because they're going to be influenced by the pain. If they have back pain, they're not going to be able to work out. They probably don't eat well. They're overstressed, which is going to affect their pain tolerance, which is going to affect their leptin and ghrelin, which affects their nutrition. They probably don't sleep well, so it's going to affect them mentally. They won't train because they're going to save themselves for the job. So the first element would be, we got to remove the pain. We have to, make them feel better somehow, through very specific training. And then once we get them to move well, then we can, help them in other areas. Sometimes it's just to try to improve their sleep, but we do it in layers, and that's my checklist. I start with the 6. And the first thing you start with is, how can I help? I was giving a podcast earlier, and the doctor on there actually laughed because they said, I love it. I'm like, yeah, because we forget to ask. We just want to tell. And we forget to listen, right? We ask, how you doing? And then we're already ready to give them an answer without hearing what the response is.
But do you think it is because we don't think they know? You know what I mean? Like we don't give them enough credit, especially I'm going to back up just for like our high school maybe coaches that are listening, or young college coaches, like, well, I know what I'm doing here. And my 16-year-old, my 19-year-old kid might not know, but sometimes we have to give them a little bit more credit. And it's even taking young firefighter or police and go, well, they really don't know because I'm a strength coach and I really, and we've seen that before. I know what they need. So how do you present that to maybe a young coach come in? Like, I think those are important to talk about, but then as a young strength coach, how do you get those implemented into their thought process?
Well, the first thing is you got to make them feel empowered, right? You have to give them control back. Okay. So the idea of just do it because I told you to doesn't work anymore, right? I think it didn't start with the millennials, because when I was an athlete, I wanted to know why when I was training for the Olympics. You're training 8 hours a day. I don't want to waste time. So I'd always ask, why, coach? Why? Why? So I understood that we need to educate, right? Because that is what a coach is. We're teaching. So it's not that I already know I know, and they may not know.
Right.
My job is to bridge that gap, to get them to understand so I can have a better chance of success. And I'll give you an example. A lot of times when you work with deputies, they have a detective mindset, right? They're thinking all the time. They're judging. They're looking at you. And when you ask them, hey, how's your knee feel today? They will actually a lot of times take a second to think about what they're going to say because they want to give you the right answer. Right. Not realizing there is no right answer. And you have to sit there and they bumble through it and try to figure out how to communicate how their knee feels in an intelligent manner. And sometimes I have to go, just talk. I'm your detective. You're my crime scene. I'm coming there and I'm going to look at all the evidence and piece it together. I'm watching how you move. I'm watching your body language. I'm watching your tone. I'm listening for your tone. I'm listening to what you're saying. Do your words match your body language? And I'm reading you. Then I go, okay, I have an understanding. So I have to like filter through everything and go, oh, now this is what they need. If I can't get them to understand what we're doing, it's for nothing because they're going to go home and they're just going to forget and keep hurting themselves. So I have to make it a priority to make sure I'm clear in my communication of what we're trying to accomplish, why we're doing it, and that they understand. And that really is what it comes down to coaching 101, really. It doesn't matter if it's on the field or injury prevention or strength. I'm explaining to them why we're doing what we're doing, how the body works, or why their back hurts, so they have a better understanding of everything going on.
So then when you set that up from a standpoint, because you probably see the guys, 3 times a week, 4 times, let's just 2 times a week, a couple hours a week. So then how do you bridge that gap to go, okay, when you're home, because sometimes that control factor at home, we know we kind of fall back into the old habits. How do you go about maybe doing like a habit change or setting up blocks of like change to get them to switch over some of the things that you're saying? You can see it, but they can get them to do it as 2 different things.
But we don't overwhelm them first, right? We don't throw a ton at them. Let's say, for an example, I have a low back injury person, right? I want to know how long you've been dealing with this. If it's 20 years, I have to watch my tone because all they know is pain. So I have to start slowly explaining to them what discomfort is, what pain is, as we go along. But in the beginning, it's real basic. I only do like 3 main exercises. They never feel their back, so they feel good. They also understand that it's not standard physical therapy because they don't want to be treated like that. So they almost feel like they're working out. That's a little bit of the psychology behind it. So they feel better, right? Wow, that's challenging. That's hard. I thought we were just going to stretch. And then we also spend time educating. I want you to learn how to get out of a seat. I want you to learn how to walk. I want you to feel your back muscles when they hurt and now how to relieve the tension on it. So when you have 23 hours out of the day, you won't hurt yourself anymore. And then it's successful. They come back, man, my back felt better. Now we're building trust. There are times that I've had to say to people, I'm asking for blind trust from you. And I know that's a lot. And I will acknowledge that. And a lot of times they appreciate that. I'll say, I know I'm asking you to trust me with blind faith. I'll do my best to make sure you're going to, be successful. A lot of times I ask them, what do you want to do? And they go, what do you mean? What do you want to do? Well, you know what? I had a captain, a high-ranking official the other day say to me, I just want to be able to put my pants on without falling over or hurting my back. And I said, no problem. Let's do it. And now they have something to work from, right? Let's say we're doing a single leg exercise. I could say, hey, look, you're standing on one leg. Maybe you'll be able to put your pants on, right? And so you have to still find out, what do you want to do? Right? What do you want? What are we working for other than just removing the pain? Because that's a given, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you have to connect with them. You have to build that trust and rapport with them.
When I was speaking of trust, because the other side you do stuff is, I know with nutrition, and you even look at like getting guys to get their blood work done. I say guys and gals, to get their stuff done as officers. And sometimes I know when you first got into that, trying to get some guys to, because they look at it from the negative side, like if there's negative numbers that come up, it can be a negative things from a career standpoint, a job standpoint. You want to talk about, one, how you guys got around that, and then what were the parameters? Why were you trying to get them to do the blood work, nutrition work, to be able to look at some of that stuff from your insight to be able to help them?
Yeah, initially in '07, I got the job in Sacramento, and it was like, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, we would love to have a medical screening program. I said, oh, cool. All right. We have money? No. Do we have union support? No. In fact, we said, don't even talk about it because they're not going to be very happy with you. So I'm like, you want me to build something that's impossible? All right. And my first step was, and this goes into overcoming those things, I created a committee, and the committee was made up of everybody. It wasn't just yes people. In fact, I learned it from the book from Lincoln, where the team of rivals. I wanted everybody's input. In fact, I wanted the salty, fat, unhealthy, hardcore firefighter. I wanted him on the council to tell me everything I was doing was stupid. You're an idiot. That's dumb. Well, I wanted that because he's the guy I got to address, right? And little does he know that I don't care what you're saying. I'm not taking it personal. You're giving me the answers, and so I can overcome these roadblocks and build the trust. And first thing first was we made everything voluntary. Don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm empowering them. It's a job. It's a civil service job, and you still have a right to make a living. But let's be honest, this job will break you. It's not a matter of if, it's when. So how are you going to correct that? And I would always tell them, this health and wellness stuff is the only thing that's going to reverse what 30 years does to you. And I don't need you to look good. I need you to feel good. So we started to develop with that idea, right? That's where we came up with Fit for Duty, Fit for Life. And guys started to buy in, realizing that this wasn't so bad. We started to talk about chronic inflammation and getting your inflammatory markers checked due to the constant, 911 calls and the exposure to negatives, which will affect their inflammatory markers. And we know that leads to stroke, cancer, and heart disease. So this was like a new thing to them. They were like, oh, I thought it was all about cholesterol. Not necessarily, right? So now we're getting guys getting blood work done on their own. And eventually I got the grant, and I had to call all 800 firefighters and basically walk them to the med clinic to get it. And it was fine. Guys, actually, our union reps, one of them, I still remember it, he called me up. He says, we have to make sure that this is mandatory for everybody. I was dumbfounded. I went, wait, what? You want this mandatory? Like 4 years ago, you'd kill me. And it was amazing in the sense that he said, I did your stuff, coach. Year one, I had nothing wrong with my health. Year two, same thing. And then year three, we found something, and I was ready to go to workers' comp and fight. He's like, I'm the union guy. I got a lawyer and everything. And they said, covered, presumptive. Year one, nothing. Year two, nothing. Year three, something. You're covered. And he was blown away. He's like, this is offering better protection. It's not about firing guys, but protecting guys. But I think to do that within a department, you have to have the right individual overseeing it to build that trust. And from there on, it just took off.
Let me ask you this, because we worked with some fire departments, and I'm, through you helping with departments that are like taking strength coaches and using them more as consultants, and then they have pure fitness guys in there. What I'm seeing is, and I just had a talk a couple of days ago with a firefighter from a department, and what's happened was, as administration changes in the upper level, focus changes from, you have one chief that's really focused on the fitness and wellness program, and all of a sudden somebody else comes in and says, well, now we're going to put money in towards more community relationships and those type of things. And so the pure fitness guys who aren't strength coaches, but they've been doing some things and have a really hard passion for that, almost get discouraged from what's going on. How do you see, and I know you work with some departments just like that, how do you help those guys, and I know some of those guys are probably watching this, build a program from that standpoint when maybe, like, and I know you were talking about funding's not there, they've had support, and maybe support starts to go away, to keep guys fired up and be able to continue the program?
I mean, really, what are we saying? Yeah, I had zero money, zero anything, zero. The only thing I had was my assistant chief was supportive. Like, she was like, all right, I'm going to give you a long leash. Figure it out, right? We have no money, so don't ask. We don't have this of, whatever. So I think the administration changes all the time, and you'll see that happen in a lot of departments. It even happened with us. But I also understood that I was the individual carrying the flag. This is my department. This is my company, right? And I have to make sure, find ways to keep it going. Whether that be finding free, nutrition books, cookbooks, offered by the Volunteer Fire Council. That's an easy win, and firefighters love free stuff. So I was like, hey, I got you cookbooks. And a lot of people when they say a program, they want to keep it going. I'm like, you have to space it out. One, they're already overworked a lot of times, and you can't just do everything at once. You can't just throw all your emails at them at once. You have to be very strategic and keep the momentum going, and that's key. So I was very strategic when I sent out emails. I called it Coach's Corner. I'd always have a quarterly newsletter, articles that I felt they would be interested in. I did surveys to get their input. In the beginning, the survey was a joke. Everybody laughed and called me names, or you should have read some of the stuff. But eventually, you got some good information, because when things did change, and this was 08, 09, we're talking the financial crisis, right? No hiring. There was a hiring freeze. We were browning out. They were talking about cutting me. It was crazy. So in reality, you got to keep the momentum going. You have to keep it going to the point where, you spread it out and just keep it positive. That's why a lot of times the fire chief said it was a beacon of our department, because it gave us pride even in dark times. Now the administration changes and the peer fitness trainers get frustrated, and I often tell them, look, don't let your passion turn into frustration. It doesn't change what your job is, right? I do understand a lot of times, even for us, our peer fitness trainers weren't compensated. They were doing it out of their own passion and goodwill. So it was a fine balance for me not to overwork them, but keep them also engaged,
Right.
So it was fun. And that was my job to manage it. So really, in the end of the day, I was managing a program. I wasn't giving training programs per se to each individual. In fact, I would tell a firefighter, oh, you want that? Go to Jake. Hey, you want a running program? Go to Sean. You want nutrition? Chief Augustine was awesome. And you keep them engaged, right? You keep them engaged, and you keep the momentum going. I know it gets frustrated, but a lot of times, like Bill Belichick, ignore the noise. Like, you still can do your job. You can still, at the end of the day, do what you need to do.
Well, I think one of the things that we've talked about before and going into different departments is to understand those needs, and that your programs, and just what you said, it's not just one program, because one program can't begin to fit the needs of everybody. I know you're great at being able to set up, just like you said, different programs for different folks, or where they're at in maybe their profession or just in their career. You want to maybe talk a little bit that one size doesn't fit all. I think, like LA thinks it's going to fit. So some smaller department looks, well, this is what LA does, or this is what Austin Fire does, or they look at a big department and think they're going to implement their program.
Really, in essence, what I'm seeing, and we talked about, I didn't mention it earlier, but I'll say it now, what I'm seeing with the industry is that it is a copycat industry, especially on public safety. If the cops do this, hey, LA's doing this, we got to do it over here. But I often say, how do you know if you're not copying crap?
Right.
I've got two pops crap, right? And this is becoming very alarming to me, in the sense that we're seeing everybody's hiring athletic trainers first.
Yeah.
They have their position, they have their place, and I think they're a wonderful resource, just like a strength coach is. But a lot of the injuries we often see in this job are strains and sprains that could be rectified or easily fixed with just simple training programs. For example, one shoe doesn't fit all, except for when it comes to strength. We have to keep these guys strong. It doesn't matter if they're old or young. The stronger they are, the harder they are to break, yet everybody wants to do circuits. I think circuits have their place, but if we were going to address heart disease in the fire service, we'd have a better chance of nutrition and blood work than exercise. If we want to reduce injuries, we get them strong. Once you're strong, then the world is open, right? We can do all kinds of high-intensity power training and all types of crazy stuff. But the first and foremost, we at Sacramento hit across all the time, you have to be strong. What's that mean? That's a tough one. And I finally decided to say, I need you strong enough to be imperfect on the job. Because your gear, the job itself won't allow you to be perfect. So I need you to be strong enough at different vector angles to resist anything and be imperfect so you don't get hurt. It's okay to be imperfect. I mean, everybody in sports moves imperfectly, but they're strong enough to be resilient to not get hurt. And I'm like, that's all I want from you. And that's an arbitrary number, but they know what that means now. So being strong is first and foremost the most important thing.
So how do you get some of those folks that, and we know there's some folks that are like, hey, I'm a runner. I don't like to lift. I'm I'm going to do my little circuit stuff and those type of things too, to maybe go in and change. Because then we have those guys that they don't want to do any of the cardio stuff. They're not so concerned about their diet. They just want to lift heavy weights and be strong, and which is great. Like you said, they're hard to break. But then we see maybe on the flip side with those guys, they're not so concerned about blood work, nutrition, diet, some of those other things. How do you find the balance of that, or how would you suggest some of those folks, and even like say, even from a sports team, to find, like I have guys that just like lift heavy or go home, and you kind of the happy medium to make sure you're making a better person and not just a strong person, or somebody's like, I'm not doing that because I don't want to do strength training.
I think if you're an athlete, I work with athletes still continuously. I have, pro volleyball players and stuff, right? We have the golfer from Alabama. But when you work with athletes, you can be almost, I don't want to say narrow in your vision, right? Because you have your style and it's basic and strength. But with tactical, you have to be open-minded. You have to be good in a lot of things. And so every day I'm learning how to communicate to the runner. For example, we work with an elite running team here, one of the law departments. And trying to get runners to lift, is like nearly impossible. However, we held a 1-hour clinic for them, and I was able to convince them the value of strength training. So we now, again, are educating them on what strength training is for runners, right? Improved running economy, less injuries. And then all of a sudden, everybody wanted to lift weights. So I had to develop training programs for the runners, not deputies. And that's where we had to go, okay, we're making programs now for runners, not deputies. They're just cops on the side.
Right.
But we communicated that of why the value. And now the fun part is, as a coach, you're trying to develop a training program for runners, but secretly develop them also for law enforcement without them knowing it, right? So that's the fun game. But then you have your guys who are really, really strong and just want to lift, right?
Right.
I think the most important thing as a coach is not to be critical, but understand why. Well, why don't you like to do this? Why don't you like to do that? Well, I'm a power lifter, coach. Okay, just run 10 minutes after you're done your lift, because powerlifting at that load hardens your arteries. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, so get on the treadmill and just jog for 10 minutes to soften it up. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't educate myself, right? So now they're like, oh, okay, so I have to do a little cardio. Yeah, you do, to soften the arteries. Oh, right? So I take it back to their sport, not the job.
Right.
Right. I don't ever go back to fit for duty, right? Because we don't know what that really means, right? It doesn't mean because you run 1.5 miles, you're a good firefighter, right? And just because you can put the wet stuff on the hot stuff doesn't mean, you're in shape. So I try to get rid of those things and say, all right, you're a power lifter. This is why I want you to do that. The other side of that is they all hurt some way, somehow. They all injured. They all have back pain, something. And that's my key. Oh, your back hurts? Oh, your shoulder hurts from all the pressing. Let's try this. And they become, again, if you remove that pain element, they are like, hey, what else you got? What else you got? What else you got?
Right.
So you have to be very knowledgeable in all the different areas. And man, if somebody comes to me about a sport that I'm not familiar, I learn the history of the sport. I'll learn everything so I can relate it back to them. Not the I'll get the performance stuff. I want to know. I have pole vaulters. I learned so much about pole vaulting. It was crazy. But now I can talk to them, right? I can understand, hey, this is why we're doing that. This is what we're doing this for. And I think that's really important for coaches nowadays to understand. It's not necessarily the programming. That's easy. It's how do you relate it to your population to get them to buy in.
Right. And let me ask you about this too, because I see it in a lot of times from the administrative standpoint. And I know we've had heavy discussions when we've come out and done some classes about standards and like, this is what you need. And I know this is a good one for you, but they talk about standards, say, well, we got to look to be able to have some standards. And then what starts to happen is they try to get standards, or they have standards, but to let folks get in, the standards are so low. Like, I just talked to a firefighter not too long ago, and he's like, I literally like walked like this, and it was almost a joke because of the standards that they had put in place, because they didn't want to offend anybody by having standards. So the standards, he's like, I literally wanted to just see if I could do this, and I literally walked, like, gave barely 30%, and I still passed the standard that they had put in place, says, which now is a joke. So guys that really think there should be a standard think it's a joke, but they don't. I'll let you kind of talk about from a standard standpoint.
I mean, honestly, really, like, you look at what standards are, it always is at the bottom, right? You're always just getting the bottom feeders, right? It's the baseline bottom. And if you can pass it, cool, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, what are we accomplishing? Like, yeah, it does become a joke. It becomes a mockery. We used to have a physical agility test at Sacramento that everybody had to do, and pool hose and all this stuff. And they had to pass a time at 4:03. Guys used to do it with cigarettes, because it became such a joke. They would smoke cigarettes while doing it. They would come up to the finish line and go, how much time left? And we'd be at like 2 minutes. And he'd go, and he'd just stand there until he goes, tell me 4:01. And I was like, this is a joke. Like, this is stupid. What are we getting out of this? This is a waste of time.
Right.
So we implemented different things, more fitness related, and then provided them feedback. Oh, your strength push-pull ratio. We kind of made it fun. And then everybody started doing cardiovascular conditioning and push-ups and pull-ups, and everybody enjoyed it. Then they started competing against each other. And I'm like, all right, so now we have fitness numbers. And we reassured them it had nothing to do with the job. It's just for yourself. So I often get like caught up with standards. I'm like, what are you trying to prove? Like,
right.
Well, they need to be stronger to do this. I don't know what that means. Like, cops don't jump over walls, yet it's one of the work sample test batteries. I'm like, if you work in the military, right, they got standards, and everybody just works out to get the standard. The next day, they all go back to their normal ways. I'm like, it just means like, hey, a checkbox to cover your ass, really, is what it is.
Right.
I think with people with standards, I'm like, you're opening up a Pandora's box, because in reality, is it really ensure that you can do this job? No. Not at all. You still need to train. There's still the emotional side. There's still this side. How do I know that they're not good at their job? Because they can't do a pull-up. That doesn't tell me they can't be a good cop or firefighter. It tells me they're weak.
So how do you work because there are some divisions, because I know just some of the people where it's like, we work out, these guys don't work out. So there's almost a division, but the guys, like you said, some of those other guys that don't work out, it's because of pain and some other stuff, but they're really good firefighters, they're good police, because they have the intellectual properties that make them, like, when I had a chance to work with some professional teams, we were talking one defensive back, he's like, I haven't ran a 40-yard dash time 40 since my pro day back 11 years ago. Like, he goes, I've never run a 40 in the last 11 years, but I'll backpedal with anybody.
Right.
He's like, this is almost ridiculous that they even do this, because I'm a defensive back in the NFL. I don't need to run a 40. I need to backpedal.
Right.
But there was, there's that gap where almost like, well, these guys don't, we're here, and it starts to almost separate. I could see it with some of the folks where it separates departments. How do you, from a coach's standpoint, kind of bring guys back together to get them to both see each other's side?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. It's becoming worse as the industry grows, right? Because now you're having more coaches come involved, and we have these divisions. I had those divisions, the haves and have-nots, the runners and the non-runners, or whatever, the guys in shape and the guys out of shape. And I remember my first year, we did fitness assessments, standard 1.5 miles or 3, the 1 mile walk. They just had to show up, but they didn't have to do it. And I watched, guess who did the 1.5 miles? Well, the runners, obviously. Because if you're fat and out of shape, or a big guy like me, you don't like to run. So I was like, we don't need to help those in shape. We need to help the ones out of shape. And I'm like, okay, so how do I bridge the gap? How do I get the guys running to stop beating on the guys who don't run, right? And I realized that this clique, this I'm a tactical athlete, bravado-ness really was detrimental to that. Like, it was creating bigger divisions. You know, this idea of high intensity power training, that I can do Murph fast and hard and you're weak. I was like, dude, I'm a kayaker. I'll whoop your ass. Like, that doesn't make you better. And
Right.
so we established the idea of it being positive, proactive, even at the academy. You know, it can be challenging, it can be tough, but we don't knock each other. In fact, help each other. So we started to bridge the gaps by implementing other tools, a foam roller. Now you got the old timer working on a foam roller at least. Never did anything before, but his back feels better. We brought in the TRX suspension training. So instead of doing, you know, handstand push-ups, the old timer can do a chest press without killing himself. And we started to implement different tools, and we promoted the idea of crew integrity and working out together. You know, don't put each other down. And if they did, I would actually say, don't forget, I was the guy training for the Olympics. I'll smoke you all. So, and I'm not even a firefighter. So, you know, I really make it important to go, look, you don't need to put each other down. You already do that enough, right? You're already battling the outside world.
Right.
Tell them to come out and just try the foam roller. Tell them to do this. How about the fact that don't even worry about exercise. Tell him to come out and join the crew and see if he can't improve his nutrition. Get some more blueberries in the ice cream. I'll call it healthy, okay? And so you start to give them little low-hanging fruit to bridge the gap, right? And understand that, hey, you know, this guy's been on this job 25 years, dude. You've been on it for 5. Do you understand that the job may have broken him? And I think for myself, I always try to tell the other young coaches coming in, don't be critical. If they don't want to do your fitness assessment or your workout that day, I would always go, no problem. If you don't, if you want to, let me know. I'll come back to you, whatever you need. I don't know what they've been so exposed to. I don't know what type of shift call they had. I don't know what they're struggling with. I'm not going to make it worse for them. I'm going to be supportive of them because that's my job. And then you start to see that culture change.
So let me ask you this, because where do you see, like we talked about, it's kind of started 5 to 10 years, where do you see in first responders? I know military is kind of a little bit different, but moving forward, do you think that they will develop more health fitness programs and then start to bring in strength and conditioning coaches? And then from the other flip side, for guys that are thinking, hey, this would be kind of a cool thing, what should they start, you know, over the next few years if they had a desire to do something like that? What areas should they look into? Like you said, yes, you want to be a strength conditioning coach, but what areas besides that would help them do a good job of being a strength conditioning coach for as a tactical strength coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think the industry going to grow? I think we will start to see more health and wellness. Right now across the nation, especially in law enforcement, it's officer wellness, which is more of the mental side of it. But if you're knowledgeable enough to understand the hormonal levels, cortisol and stress, and how exercise can help reduce that, now you can, get involved with that kind of stuff.
Right.
Do I think more strength coaches will be around? I think initially they'll start to go with the idea of having an officer oversee a program. And that's kind of what we're starting to see. And then as it gets rolling, maybe bring on the strength coach, but it'll probably come from, a lieutenant who's developing this program, then they hire the professional. I do see that occurring. I'm seeing a lot of athletic trainers get hired. And again, I'm not against it. I just often say, if we look at the line, in the front end, you got your strength coach and the pre and all that stuff. And we could probably eliminate 80% of the injuries just by probably giving them more side planks and stuff.
Right.
The athletic trainer here on the back side is where, they're going to treat the injury. If I can eliminate 70%, right, we'll have a cost justification and then they finish up the other 30. That's cool. But if all I do is send them straight to the athletic trainer and they're not knowledgeable in strength and conditioning protocols, all we're going to see is a circle again. And we're not going to get the numbers we want. And we're not going to see the industry grow as where we think it needs to go or could go.
Let me ask you, do you think you'll see, and maybe talk about your guys' model at the university there of how you guys set up? It's not just you, but you see models like what you guys have in place getting implemented at different spots throughout the country. Because your model is pretty unique, I think. Don't you think? Maybe some other places have it, but maybe it's getting more. But I think you have a kind of unique model at the school there. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, our models basically are horizontal. You have vertical integration and you have horizontal. We're a vertical integrated company. So we're a health center, and we actually have sports medicine chiropractors, which front load actually the diagnosis instead of, just throwing things at it. So when a deputy gets injured, he comes in, and the sports medicine chiropractor will spend almost 2 hours with them. 2 hours and getting a very detailed documentation of what's going on. And then we'll sit down as a team and kind of go, all right, this is what it is. We're going to start, they had surgery on their back, and we are able to schedule that, get it done, the MRI within weeks, because we have an agreement with all the professionals in the area and in our network. So we can get you an MRI within a week. We can get you surgery within 2 weeks instead of 6 months. And then once they get that, we come up with a treatment plan, and we work together as a team. And what we try to do is I'll transition it from, they go to treatment, then they come out and do reconditioning, and it turns into performance, right? And we all stay in contact, because it takes a team. Right. That's why I want people to understand that it's not just an athletic trainer. I would prefer to see the strength coach hired first, really see a significant savings with a knowledgeable person. Right. And then you can have an athletic trainer as a strength coach, and then you win both sides of it, right?
Right.
But we want to be able to create a team environment. And I'm just a little skeptical of just athletic trainer, because we're having departments hire copycats, right? Oh, they have an athletic trainer. And they have their place just like a strength coach. But let's look at the timeline of how it usually occurs, and then we can build a team. And that's really what we want to do.
So what's the difficulty of building a team? Like, why don't somebody look at you? I mean, because like you said, they're model oriented. Why don't they look at more of your model of what you guys are doing there and going, because you guys have such a great success rate with the people that you're working with, why wouldn't somebody look and go, I mean, is it expense, you think, from that standpoint? Or what do you think the negative is? Or why don't they look at that model and start trying to implementing that, do you think, John?
I think, one, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And when you get to those decision makers, just like in any business or sport, you have egos and you have other things involved, politics. And I think a lot of times it's, well, are these individuals having success with athletic trainers? Yeah, absolutely. But are they having the success that I think you could have? Probably. I don't know. I just know what I know from what we did, and we had enormous success. And I think a lot of times at those levels, the command, they don't want to be embarrassed, but they also don't want to be the guy to say no. But at the same time, they don't know what they don't know. So it's easy to copycat versus take my word for it, right?
Right.
And so it's like, well, we appreciate it, coach, but we're going to do what, this department's doing because it seems like it's working, right? And I just go, okay, like, I get it. It's like you want to play it safe. Right? You want to play it safe, so you just want to copycat. And now you have your checkbox, and you just got your program, and cool. Yeah, I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. Sometimes we become our own worst enemies.
Right.
And on the flip side of that, hiring the wrong person, you'll just stall your program out.
Well, it actually goes about 3 steps back, don't you think? I mean, like they say, fire quickly, hire slowly. Right. I mean, if the wrong person there, you got to get them out, because we've seen that before too in programs. It can really do bad things to a program if the wrong person's there.
And unfortunately, in government, we don't get rid of anybody usually. So if they have the wrong person in that position, they'll probably just tell them to be quiet and do nothing and just let them do their thing. Because again, if you get rid of the position, you'll never get it back. And so they understand that game. So they don't want to eliminate the position or fire the person. They just be like, all right, well, we have our checkbox. It's good. So
that makes it. Let me ask you, and I know we're with the COVID-19, like I said, I was talking to a couple of guys just not too long ago, and like for their department, like in the station houses, this is the firefighter guys I was talking to. They said a couple of station houses, their facility where they can work out is a little bit bigger. But they were saying, well, some of the smaller station houses, they're literally, the room's so small, they're only allowing one firefighter in there per, you know where I'm going with this, per hour to work out. And they said it's almost, because there's fires and other responsibilities. They're like, for us to try to get a workout, and gyms around up here are closed. They're like, for us to try to be able to maintain our workout, like there's no way possible on our shift because of all the other stuff we have going on. And now one guy can be in there in an hour. They're like, and what we were talking about is, well, figure out something to do with body weight stuff. Do some of the things maybe without getting too like us getting not
Well,
talking before, but like all the stuff that they maybe can do from that situation.
I'm sure people are going to blow me up, but I mean, really, at the end of the day, we ran 48.96 in Sacramento, 2 on, 4 off, and my busy houses were always in shape as it is, right? They were the A-type guys. They were in shape. They were good. And a lot of times with those guys, you tell them, hey, you know what? Don't worry about working out. You're going to get your butt handed to you, on the job, which, by the way, is a workout. It's just a long marathon. But I can get more done at home. So do this at home. While you're at work, try to recover and rest and save yourself for the job, right? So those fire stations are like having time. I actually would sometimes say it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. We got an epidemic going on here, okay?
Yeah.
Let's use this time to, try to get better sleep. Let your injuries heal up. Use the foam roller, loosen up a little bit, right? Do a little stretching or something.
Right.
And then we can do some workouts at home, and I'll give you some body weight routines that you can do at home. Hey, get your kids integrated with it or something, right? Like you guys can do it together. And you have to get creative and like that. But a lot of times I'm like, don't work out at the firehouse if it's too hard. We don't want to make this more stressful, okay? We're not curing cancer here. We're just trying to get people to move. So let's not make it complicated.
Right, just make it easy. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I know you're running busy out there and got a million things, irons in the fire. I always appreciate getting together. I know we were supposed to have done a class here this week, and we weren't able to do it. So everything's kind of crazy right now. So hopefully we'll get back together here in another couple months. So it's always good talking to you, brother, and having you on. So I appreciate you coming on and taking the time.
Thank you, Mark, man. I appreciate it. Love you, brother.
Yeah, I love you too, man. We'll talk to you later. Hey, this is Coach Rozy. Catch us next Wednesday, 10 o'clock on Wednesday for Coach's Chalk Talk. Again, hey, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, buddy?
The best way to get me is J Hofman, JOHNHOFMAN, that's 1 F, at SCUHS, so Southern California University Health Systems.edu.
EDU, yeah. And if you get a hold of us and have questions for Coach, we'll get them to him too. So again, thanks for being on, brother.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Yep, talk to you later. You bet. Thanks.